What's going on the conversation about this Saturday game between the Raiders and the COVID-19 ravaged Cleveland Browns organization?
Yeah, I mean, generally this December meeting, in Dallas, and it's here every year, is sort of an update on things like where we're going with the Super Bowl. It's setting things up for the following year's off season, and obviously, like the happenstance that we're here, and you have the outbreak with the Rams on Monday and Tuesday. Now the outbreak with the Browns. Washington's got a rising number of cases too. I think has brought this to the forefront, and it's what everybody's been talking about over the last 2 days here. What I can tell you, Rich, is that they're planning on going forward with the game on Saturday. And, one of the issues that they're going to have now is that if they were to move it to, say, Sunday or Monday, that probably wouldn't do any good because the overwhelming number of cases in the NFL this year, when guys test test positive, they're having problems testing out. Like, if you'll notice, if you go through all these cases, almost every one of the player cases, the staff cases, these people have sat out for the full 10 days because they keep testing positive, so they have to go through the full 10 days. So, you make the argument with the Browns, if that's the case with these 15 guys and maybe the number rises over the next couple of days, what sense is it to move the game to Monday or Tuesday when you're still within that 10-day window? So I think that they're going to go forward with the game as best they can. And while that's going on here in Dallas, the officials from the league office basically informed, the owners and executives that they're discussing significant changes to the COVID-19 protocols with the union now. I think everybody's viewing this as an inflection point. I think the feeling here is that it's going to be difficult under the current circumstances to get from here to the middle of February and to Los Angeles for the Super Bowl under the current circumstances unaffected. So, my sense is we will see some alterations to the COVID-19 protocols coming.
Like what? I mean, because you could test positive well after you, through CDC rules and guidelines that everybody is followed since the beginning of this pandemic, you could test positive long after you're no longer symptomatic or considered to be contagious. That's why many people who travel abroad are stuck there when they test positive abroad, because they're not allowed to leave the country or come back in until they're test negative for many spots around the world. So that's in place for somebody who might be vaccinated and has a false positive. So you get 2 negatives and now you get to play. But if you are actually positive, it's impossible sometimes to test twice in a row, which is why if this is for real with Baker Mayfield, a real positive, he's out for Saturday. That's going to be Case Keenum's gig. So what changes are you referring to, do you think, with the policy here?
I think there are 3 things that we can look for. I'm not saying they're all going to happen, but they've all at least been discussed. The first one is the idea that they could cut down the waiting periods. That 10-day period, maybe they turn it to 5 days. Somehow altering that waiting period would be, I think, one piece of this that they will and have already broached with the union, and all this stuff obviously needs to be discussed with the union. The second thing is that they could go into enhanced protocols with all teams in the playoffs, which I think would require meeting virtually. And this is something that they actually warned teams that this could happen. And maybe it happens before the playoffs, but going back to even vaccinated players wearing masks around facilities and all of that different stuff. So that's number 2. And number 3, and this to me is probably the most significant one if it were to happen, because it would be, I think, a departure from where pro sports have been over the last year and a half, is that they could incentivize players getting the booster shot by saying to them, if you get the booster shot, we will no longer test you regularly as long as you're asymptomatic. And that's the one to me, that, like I said, it'd be a pretty major step in a different direction than the one they've been going in, but I think maybe a step towards this sort of resignation that this isn't going away and that everybody has to learn to live with it. And at least for the people who have the booster shot and have taken the steps to protect themselves and others, they shouldn't have to miss work if there's an asymptomatic, if they're asymptomatic. In other words, you're treating symptoms. You're not searching for the virus. And like I know that sounds like again like a pivot for them, and it is. But that's the way a lot of workplaces in America are right now. Rich, like you look at like most workplaces, they're not testing people regularly. Got people get sick, then there's contact tracing and the rest of it. Schools work that way. They're not testing kids regularly. But, when something comes up, they will test. And so that to me would be the most significant one is if they decide to create that incentive for players to get booster shots. And, of course, as I'm sure you guys read the other day, by December 27th, for staff to remain in Tier 1 and Tier 2, they're actually going to have to get booster shots. So that last part has to be negotiated with the union, but it could happen.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.